is on.
Hello and welcome to Redeemer Review. It's a quick look at what's happening in our church and community this week. I'm Phil Kuhn. Next to me is Billy Brinkerhuff.
Hi, Phil.
Another week.
Another week?
Big week.
Yes, it is. We've got a lot of information to go over this week.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on, so stay tuned. Plus, we got an interview coming up at the end of this video as well.
Yeah, a really good interview this week.
So stay tuned for that. Here's what we're going to be talking about today. Of course, we got Sunday's theme, which is a confusion of languages to produce humility. We're going to be talking about Veterans Day yesterday, our missions Christmas project. We're going to do a review of last week's sermon. We're going to talk about this week's sermon and the verse. LittleStep's employee highlight, which is going to be exciting today, and then announcements, and then, of course, that interview with Christa Plew. So, going to be a big one.
I had a good interview with Christa Plew, and you're right, there is a big announcement for LittleStep, so a lot of stuff coming up.
Stay tuned for that. Before we dive in too much, of course, we want to recognize our veterans and say a big thank you to everybody. I know I have a father-in-law, a cousin, a best friend, other family members, a grandpa who have all served. And so, again, it's great sacrifice, and we're really thankful. So thank you to all of our veterans.
My father and my grandfather both served. We have lots of people here in the church that served, and it was a wonderful sacrifice for them to make. And for all of you out there that did serve, thank you for your efforts. This week in our bulletins, this Sunday, you will receive an insert. Look something like this. It is a way to support our veterans through the Synod. The Synod has an outreach called Missions to the Armed Forces. There's information in here about that and how you can help support them in their mission to serve our armed forces.
Yeah, that's awesome. Speaking of missions board doing something with Christmas this year.
Yes, the missions board every year does something for a family or a project or a charitable organization in our community. They try to help out. This year, they're trying to do something a little different. A project for or support of someone in our neighborhood. So what they're looking for are names of people that may have been impacted by 2020. A lot has gone on this year. There's been a lot of people's lives that have been turned upside down or have found themselves in situations that they weren't planning for. So if you know someone like that, the missions board would like to know, and they're going to gather those names together, see what they can do for them, and try to help out families that are in our neighborhood that are directly impacted through the lives of the people in our church. And they said they need those names by Friday, November 27th.
Okay. And they should go see Christa Plew for that? Or
Christa Plew,
anybody from the missions board?
Or email the church office.
Okay.
Either one.
All right. So, do you want to dive into last week's sermon and message and kind of do a recap for us?
Yeah, let's take a look at last week's sermon. We had Noah's Unsinkable Faith was the theme or the title of Pastor Bob's sermon, and it was based on Genesis 6, which was the flood. And what happened? God found that the earth was full of wickedness, and man was not following his plans anymore. And what he wanted to do was turn it around again. So he found one righteous man who had great faith. That would have been Noah and his family, using them as a vessel to preserve man. He saves them through the flood. However, what we find today is a lot of the same things Noah had in his day. A lot of people turning from God, putting ourselves as the center of attention, and a lot of indifference to God. We find ourselves in a similar situation. However, we have one thing that Noah didn't have back in his time. We have a Savior in Jesus Christ. And he begs us to turn to Him, so that we will avoid that wrath of God. And He wants us to come to Him and fulfill His love for us. So that leads us into this
week's sermon. That's right. The Tower of Babel. Right? So the world has a fresh start, okay? Following the flood, and humans did exactly what God commanded us to do, right, Billy? To be fruitful, multiply, fill the whole earth. But really, no, right?
Yeah, no.
So they tried to make themselves the most important, but God had a way to divert people back to his plan. And that's what we're going to be diving into this Sunday. And this week's verse is from Genesis 11, 7 through 8, and it says this: "Come, let us go down there, confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city." So that's what we have to look forward to this Sunday.
Yes.
So it's going to
I'm
be
excited to hear that.
Yeah.
And as always, if you missed last week's sermon, it is up on our webpage and also out on YouTube. So if you missed the Sunday and
It was
you want to hear
a
what
good
Pastor
one.
Bob's, yes, last week's was very good, very entertaining. I loved his line about why no one ever went fishing.
Oh, what was it?
Only 2 worms.
That's right. Oh, that's right. Only 2 words. That's classic. He got a laugh out of the congregation from that one. The craziest thing I thought of for that sermon was it 120 years?
120 years.
That
Yes.
Noah had to build this.
to
I mean,
build that
that's
ark.
longer than any of our lifetimes.
Or
And-
convince people to turn around.
That's right.
One or the other.
Yeah, 120 years.
Yes.
That's insane. So, should we-
600-year-old man building a great big boat.
boy, that'd be a sight to see, wouldn't it? LittleStep's Daycare.
LittleStep's Daycare. Today we have an employee highlight, and actually a great big announcement as well. Tammy has hired a new assistant director for the daycare. Her name is Tasha. She was an employee here a little over 5 years ago. And when she was here, she worked here for about 4 years. And she worked in every room, and she was also one of the lead teachers. She has a background in banking and accounting, and eventually had a daughter with her husband, and they had her enrolled here at LittleSteps. With her being enrolled here, she started having contact with the daycare again, and decided that she'd like to come back. And Tammy and the board went through doing their interviews and found that she would be a pretty good assistant director. She'll be starting here on November 30th, and when she's not spending time working, she likes to enjoy time with her family, her husband, and her daughter. And Tammy is looking very much forward to continuing to move the daycare forward with her assistants.
I'm excited about this one because I actually know Tasha personally.
You do?
And I know her husband, Kyle. So it's a pretty cool story. And she's a great photographer as well and has done some family pictures and stuff like that.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, that's going to be a great addition. Excited to have her here.
Yeah, well, I think everyone's excited to have her come aboard.
Yeah, so looking forward to that. Diving into some announcements, the Quilters group going to be decorating the sanctuary with the quilts that they've made throughout the year. Quilts are given to organizations that are in need. Concordia Seminary and Fort Wayne have been recipients of the beautiful quilts this year. So big thank you to everybody in the Quilters group.
Those quilts are beautiful, and whoever gets them, it'll be a definite blessing to their life.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want to jump into Commitment Sunday and some of the boxes?
Commitment Sunday, we have coming up our pledge envelopes, which Candy was here talking to us about last week. Those were returned to your mailboxes last week. This week you'll find the new envelopes and pledge cards in your mailboxes. So if you missed last week, stop by your mailbox, pick up your old pledge card, and get the new one. Candy will be up front this week during announcements to tell us about what to do with those cards. And then on the 22nd, we will receive those back.
Great. Continuing on with a couple more announcements. Choir rehearsal is going to start today. 7:15. It's going to be their first offering and service will be on the 22nd. All right, so very excited about that. It's going to be really nice getting to hear the choir up there.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty special. Also, again, Commitment Sunday is November 22nd. The new envelopes are in your mailboxes, like Billy said. And then Combined Service, Sunday, November 29th at 10 a.m. with Bible study to follow.
Yeah.
I love the combined services.
It's going to be a lot of fun. The church continues to grow. We have more people, which is going to be a little challenging with the setup of the sanctuary, especially with the social distancing. We'll see how that works out, but we have the live stream working, so you can go downstairs into the fellowship hall, watch it down there if we need more social distancing. But the praise band's got to move somewhere, and fitting everything together it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of this church has been that we combine those services every once in a while. I think that's really neat. So
yeah, bringing the whole family together is always a good idea.
Excited for that. Interview time, Billy, right?
Interview, yes. Christa Plew, our new head of the missions board. Well, actually not new. As she discusses, she was the head of the missions board once before. But it was really good to sit down with her and talk about it. And Christa and I had a special guest in the interview, so take a look, see who shows up in that one. Ready for that interview?
Let's do it.
All right. Hi, I'm here with Christa Plew. We have just finished, well, actually, she just finished a council meeting, and she has agreed to sit down with me and answer a few questions about missions. Christa is our new head of the missions board, and I believe that you've been the missions board head before. Is that correct?
I have, yes. I had a brief kind of hiatus from everything.
And what was the cause of that?
I had a baby.
Yes, a very cute baby.
Yeah. Who's 2 now, so I've been away about 2 years.
Okay.
Funny how that works.
Hey, you're excited to be back?
I am. I'm super excited. Missions has always been kind of where I feel most called within God's realm of work. I don't think I'd make a very good trustee. So. So I kind of feel like the last time I was doing missions, we pretty much, by the end of like 10 years, we had the different organizations that we helped with. So there was kind of a little bit of order to what we did, but it was really just this idea of like, let's just be doing acts of kindness and whatever it looked like. And so there wasn't like any set structure to what we did. And kind of taking some time off and I guess just growing and evolving as a person and really looking at how each of us are gifted so differently. The things that are really touching to my heart are different than things that are going to touch your heart.
Absolutely.
And I feel like God creates his body of believers with those different strengths. And so what I'm looking to do this time with our board is have each of us pray and look internally and find those areas in which we feel God has put tenderness towards. And then we'll come together as a group and look at how can we affect change within these areas. Because if we're passionate and it's something that really means a lot to us, that's going to bleed over into our board and our effectiveness. Like even just explaining this idea to the board, people were talking about, they're like, oh man, I know this, and then I'm like, oh man, that's super exciting. And so just in that little bit, you could feel a little bit of synergy, but that's too like buzzwordy, but like excitement around and so we're kind of referring to them as our passion project.
God's people being passionate about him and what he can do through them.
Exactly.
It's a great thing.
Yeah. I think especially right now, with everything going on in life, and even if you strip away politics and COVID, people have real challenges and real changes to their life that it's overwhelming and it's crazy. And I feel like even people who have traditionally been your optimistic, motivators who are building everybody up, I hear them saying time and time again, man, I'm burnt out, I'm losing it. And so people who I would have said were indestructible, lights are tired and beaten down, and not through anything that they've done, but just because it's been a hard year. The goal of our board is to be, and what I would like the goal of our church to be, people who just shine his light. It is a dark world, it is a hard world, and we have the gift of knowing that none of it is in our hands, it's all in his hands, and it's all good.
Yes.
And so that's what I would like our mission board and our church to be, is a light in a dark world. Again, I come back to when the Bible talks about being a light, and I look at the life of Jesus and how, he didn't necessarily pass judgment on why you were poor or why you, he just loved you where you were at and wanted to help you and had compassion on you. And man, what I would love, even for myself, is for people to look around and just have compassion with each other instead of hating and anger and looking at all the reasons that we're different. I think that's one thing that Jesus is the great equalizer. He could look at a group of people, and as different as they were on the outside, he saw the commonalities, And so really just the life of Jesus and how he lived and how he just was there to love. I guess for the short term, for Christmas, we're going to be trying to help people and families who are having trouble this year within, I don't know, how do I say it, within our reach as a church. So
in our neighborhood.
In our neighborhood. So who do we know that we can help, whether it's even just providing them with a meal? You know, if they have young children, I mean, it would personally just break my heart to think about kids waking up and not having any kind of excitement. Not that the excitement is around gifts, but just trying to help as many people as we can so that they have that joy that's not necessarily with gifts, but for kids,
Well,
I mean,
when
let's
you're
just be
that
real.
age,
For
that's,
kids,
you
it's
know,
all
that's
about
the-
the gifts,
yeah.
you know, and hopefully as a parent you can help teach
Yeah.
that it's more behind that, but so that's kind of the short term. And as far as like going into the next year, I think, you know, people in the church will hear more about whatever our passion projects end
Right.
up being. And I don't even know what mine are going to be. Yeah, because I feel like I have so many, like in my book, I think I have about 15 that I've listed out as things that I'm like, oh man, like I can't come to the board with 15 of my own passion projects. But I know one of our members had talked about that chain breakers that we
Yes.
even just talked about, and so you know, there may be things with like multiple sclerosis and maybe even with our daycare outreach and stuff. And so I'm excited to see what people come back with, because we have a very diverse board with a lot of different personal histories and professional. And so I think it'll be really exciting to see what God throws out there.
Very good.
Yeah. Let's really lean into what it looks like to look at our commonalities and the things that we can do together to help build, because, you know, we could have anybody come into our church, and if we aren't welcoming, or if we're stuck in our routine and I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to do this, like, I feel like to a certain extent we're missing the whole point of everything.
Sure. Okay.
And so I guess just personally I would like to see, you know, a pastor come in who's enthusiastic and a good preacher and has, you know, and is excited, and to kind of really rally us to become that as well.
Sure. Yeah, be the body of Christ, you know,
Yeah.
not only, you know, loving inside of the church, but welcoming and
Right.
being his hands and feet and
Right.
doing the work that he
Yeah, and
he
I think
did.
we do that, and not to say
Yes.
that like we don't do that, but I just think it's an area that we can continue to, like I said, lean in and look and grow and continue developing.
Well, Christa, thank you for sitting down with me. I appreciated having you. And this has been Christa Plew, our head of missions board, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you.